All right, so let's talk about our air compressor situation, which is kind of cool. So when we started out with just the one Speedio, we had this DeWalt um, 4 SFM at 90 psi compressor that we bought from Home Depot. It is oil free, and we ran it into this 240 gallon tank that we got. It's a made in America tank, ASME, blah blah blah. 240 gallons. We run this at about 120 psi. So this guy was filling this at 120 psi, and then we ran through our filter regulator out. Actually, we ran through this chiller up here. Amazon, I don't know, $700, $800. And then we came through this filter regulator and we distributed off through a whole bunch of T's and went off to the shop. So that worked out well while we had the one Speedio. But then when we got the second Speedio, which is the 5-axis M300, which is a real air hog, we had to up our air compressor game. And so we started out with 4 Chinese 2 horsepower oil freeze, and there's still one Chinese one over there, but it doesn't operate. We don't run it anymore. So the Chinese ones just really weren't up to it. Got them cheap, got them before the tariffs. Didn't actually use them. Ran the DeWalt for a long time, and then we threw them into situ. We proofed out the concept. And then we found these California Air Tools compressors, which are these 3, which are available from Home Depot for about $300. And so we run 3 of those, and that quite nicely keeps up with both of our 2 Speedios. So what's going on here is these guys are running off 220 each or 240 each, and they all feed into this black tank. And they feed using these check valves with a dump line going this way through another check valve. So the air from the compressor goes through here, through this check valve and into the tank. So no air can come out of the tank and go back to the compressor. And then when we need to dump because we're turning the compressors off, there's this little line here which goes through a second check valve. So all of the 3 compressors can get teed together through check valves, and then they go to one single dump valve down here. Okay, so that's what's going on that side. So that's how we depressurize the compressors at the end of when they cycle. Okay, so this black tank here, these guys all just go into that, and then we just have a line going from that to the main tank. We don't have a regulator on that tank. We do have a pressure blow off, but we don't have a regulator. We just come straight out of that and go off to over here. That tank gets nice and toasty because all the hot air is coming off the compressors, and it's dumping heat. This tank does get a little warm during hard running, but it's not so bad as all that. We plan to take the line from this and run it to a radiator, but that's later. I haven't gotten to that yet. Trying to find a nice compressor that looks like it's actually built for a couple of hundred, at least 250 psi. We definitely try not to cheap out on any of our air fittings. It's like that's 1,000 psi brass fitting that we made sure all of these fittings are high rated fittings because the last thing we want is an air issue. And most of our air fittings we tend to buy from McMaster because they've got some supply chain quality. Okay, so what else is going on? So we've talked about 3 air compressors. They all get coupled together in this black tank. The black tank feeds the other black tank. The dump valves all go and get coalesced into one port, so that's there. We've got a contactor set up here that feeds the 3 compressors, and we've got one pressure regulator over here. It's currently reading 123 psi. So with that, it's digital, so we can set the high point and the low point, and basically that turns the contactors on and off, which turns the compressors on and off. and also the dump valve is run from that whole stack up. So pretty straightforward there. The only other thing that's kind of cool is we bought a whole bundle of these automated drain valves, and so these all drain, and they all run to the various tank bottoms. So way down here, there's a line that goes to the bottom of this tank, and that line feeds its way around and goes into one of these dump valves. And you know, even when we were running the DeWalt, we took the stupid little stopcock off the bottom of the DeWalt and we run it to one of these dump valves. This tank here, there's a port to one of those dump valves, and then even the big air cooler up there, there's a dump valve. Now, the dump valves are kind of interesting. So if we didn't have these hoses here, the dump valves would just make a lot of noise whenever they were dumping, and it would be wet water coming out. Now, note, these are oil-free compressors, so the only thing that we ever have in our system is water vapor. We don't get oil. So all of those dump valves actually just dump into a, let me get the ladder. Hang on. I should have the ladder already ready. Oops. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's climb up the ladder. Okay, so there's a gray 5-gallon tank here that you can see, and all of the dump valve ports go to the top of that, go to ports at the top of that gray tank. And then there is a solitary muffler right there. That is a muffler that's just in one of the ports on that gray tank. That's just a little exhaust muffler. And coming out of the bottom of the gray tank, there's one line that winds its way over to our sink. So let me go over to our sink and I'll show you that. So this line here comes down and goes into the sink, and it just goes into a 1 micron sock. And you can see there was some water in this, and you can see that the bottom of the sock is a little rusty. So we don't get any oil here. We do get water, and we do get rusty water because, you know, there's a little bit of corrosion in the tanks. So what's happening there? The bottoms of all of the tanks and the chiller go through these dump valves over here, which are all timed, and they all dump into the top of that gray tank, which has got a pressure, which has got an exhaust on the top. What that exhaust does is it allows the pressure in the tank to maybe sit, you know, when the dump valves run, the pressure in that tank rises a little bit, not very much. Maybe it's just a few psi. And what it does is the bottom port runs down and into that sock, and all of the water collects at the bottom of that gray tank, and that's really where the rust is. Water collects at the bottom of the gray tank, and the pressure burst from the relief from the little drain valves pressurize that tank just a little bit and pushes the water through and out. So all of the water is oil free, so it just washes. We just let it go down the drain. Not a big deal. And the system has worked really well for about 8 months now. And we love it to death because we don't have to do any compressor maintenance. There's no oil, and the drains are all automated. So in the morning, you know, there's a little, everything runs off that one Amazon plug there. So in the morning, the people come in and they say office occupied to Alexa, and then Alexa turns on that one valve, which turns on the pressure sensor there, which turns on the contactors as needed, and And then the only other thing is we've got a fan here that's also connected into that stack, which basically blows air over the compressors up there. There are some things we want to work on. So the things that we're still going to work on are we want to add an air cooler between the two tanks, and we're going to run it over to that little port right there. That roof vent, so that way the heat gets dumped out, so we don't have to air condition the excess heat. And then we want to improve the fan situation, and that's about it. The system's pretty good. There's a little bit of wiring tidy up that we still need to implement, but overall, we're really happy with this. Can't recommend it enough. California Air Tools compressors from Home Depot, big air tank, made in America. Don't need the DeWalt, although that's our backup system if everything goes crazy. These regulators we bought. Um, they're not regulators. Those drain valves we bought. I think a 15 pack off of Alibaba for I don't know a couple $100, much less expensive than trying to source locally. And all the local ones are actually these same valves anyway. So you can either pay an importer to import them and sell them to you, or you can just buy them in bulk. We bought a whole bunch because we expected to see some failures. We haven't seen any failures in months. Um, so that's it. And then everything runs off that little Amazon plug there and the fan. And yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good. And then that little tank up there that handles the sort of wastewater process. So that way, because that little tank's up there, it sort of softens the blow, and it's not like a rocket of compressed effluent coming out of this thing. And we make a couple of cups a day, but the way the whole system works, if that cup just overflows and it goes down here. I'm not sure quite why the cup's there at some level. I think I wanted to just visually see that it's working. Um, but at this point, we could just remove the cup. We have to change that sock. It's a 1 micron sock. We change that sock every month. Otherwise, the rust particles start washing their way through. And that's about it.